And a very happy Thursday to you at 12:09 in the West. Talk Radio 790 KABC, the John Phillips Show. Mr. Randy Wangs across the glass.
John, it's time to play everybody's favorite game, Count the Ums. Once again, there was a Palisades Recovery Town Hall hosted by LA County Supervisor Lindsay Horvath with special guest star Barbara Ferrer.
Yeah.
Lindsay Horvath asked Barbara Ferrer a very basic question for children, and let's hear her stumble through it.
So next question, how can residents determine if the air quality is safe to return? So I'm going to turn to Dr. Ferrer to talk to us.
Oh, she's a doctor now.
Oh, yes.
Ferrer to
like
talk,
Dr. Seuss.
Ferrer to talk to us a little bit about air quality. I know we've had a lot of questions as it relates to air quality and how we determine what safety actually looks like.
Yeah, thank you so much, Supervisor, and thanks for that question.
Thank you. Oh, thank you.
No, thank you.
I think we'll separate this into air quality that's indoors and air quality that's outside. Outside air quality,
One.
Oh, wait, you're going to need a calculator.
here in LA County is monitored regularly by AQMD and by the South Coast AQMD. They have monitors throughout the county. Those monitors collect information regularly, daily, and they post on the AQMD site every single day the results from that monitoring. And it's the air quality index is what they're posting. And you can go ahead and go on their website and look at your neighborhood and get an air quality index measure. That air quality index measure is really good for letting us know what the air quality is like.
11.
When you take into account what we call those very small particles in the air that
13
can contain substances or that may be dangerous to us if they're in high concentrations.
14.
I'm going to need an abacus.
14 ums in a 1-minute response to a very basic question from Lindsay Horvath.
Well, I could say this. Everything that woman does is on brand.
Next slide.
You notice she never throws the curveball, ever?
Not in the 5 years we've been covering her has she had anything of any nugget of intelligence to say.
Yeah.
I have never once seen her give a press conference where after I witnessed her performance, I go, I know we're down on her on a regular basis on this program, but she made a point right there. Not
I have
once
no idea.
have I ever said that. Not once.
I have a hard time understanding logic.
And what's funny is the LA County Board of Supervisors seems to be impressed with her shtick.
They're always thanking her for her leadership.
Thank you.
No, thank you.
800-222-5222 is the telephone number, 1-800-222-5222. Well, she's not the only one who's bad at her job here in the state of California. So is the mayor of Los Angeles, Karen Bass, Mayor Mother Goose, where we learned yesterday that there are, 1,300 broken fire hydrants in the city of L.A. that the fire department has identified and turned over to the Department of Water and Power to fix, and they haven't fixed any of them.
Yes.
And they claim that they have received zero receipt of this list, and they do not know about any broken fire hydrants.
DWP alleges that the fire department asked for 0 fire hydrant repairs in 2024 and 0 fire hydrant repairs in 2023.
And then right after the fires, there was a big controversy over Karen Bass cutting the budget of the fire department. But she said that she didn't regard it as a budget cut because they bought a bunch of items with the money, specific items. How that somehow doesn't qualify as a budget cut, I don't understand. Maybe because they didn't hire more firefighters with the money, but does that really matter? Because if you have a bunch of firefighters, but you don't have any trucks, or you don't have any equipment, or you don't have training facilities, or whatever it was that they spent the money on, then what use are the firefighters?
Well, and we have tons of equipment, including fire trucks, that's just sitting in maintenance bays that needs to be worked on, but there's no money to do it.
So all of this leads to the question, does the LA Fire Department have enough staff to respond to 911 calls and wildfires? And if you think that the answer to that question is a slam dunk, no, it's more of a jump ball.
For more, here's ABC 7 Eyewitness News.
As Southern California recovers from last month's devastating fires, we unfortunately know that more fires will be in our future. Many homeowners told us that they...
Uh-oh. Someone have a bad breakfast?
I heard that too.
...be in our future. Many...
You know, in radio, you pay so much more attention to the audio quality. If you're watching that on TV, you probably didn't catch it.
I get an eagle eye because I can literally see whatever this burp was.
Many homeowners told us that they barely saw any firefighters in the initial moments of the Palisades fire.
And it's leading many to ask if the LAFD has enough men and women, not just to fight the big blazes, but to respond to everyday calls as well.
You mean like the 16 calls they get a day for homeless fires?
We got a lot of frequent flyers.
And our 7 on Your Side investigative team is digging into this. And Eyewitness News investigative reporter Kevin Ozebek is here now live with more. Kevin.
Well, David and Ellen, 4 minutes. Remember that amount of time, 4 minutes. That's how long it should take firefighters to respond to the vast majority of 911 calls, according to the National Fire Protection Association. But the average response time for structure fires from one of the fire stations that serves the Palisades is 8 minutes and 16 seconds. I'll say that again, 8 minutes and 16 seconds. So
double the national average.
Okay, and let's just reflect back on why the fire was so damaging the last time, or one of the reasons. The wind was blowing really hard. Well, if the wind is blowing really hard, that means the fire spreads really fast. And if it takes you over 8 minutes to respond to it, that's game, set, match.
So double the national standard.
I had zero expectations of support from any city function.
Including LAFD.
Including the fire department, not because they're bad guys, just because there's not enough of them.
So on the night of January 7th...
I love the fact that in every story we do, everyone sounds completely defeated.
Well, they've lived in Los Angeles for a very, very, very long time. It's been 2.5 years of this nonsense.
If you're feeling down, if you're feeling blue, let's get help for you.
And before that, it was like 10 years of this nonsense.
Just be smart and stay apart.
And then before that, it was 8 years of this nonsense.
Who's getting a divorce?
He gets to keep his fake name, though.
We'll have more on that later on.
So on the night of January 7th, as the wind swept the flames closer to Ken Carman's home, Ken decided to stay behind to keep his house doused with water.
We feel like
He was one of the guys hosing his roof.
Look, if he prevented his house from burning down in the fire, more power to him. There is zero chance you'd ever see me doing that.
We feel like we got to be on our own here.
And Ken says that's because the Palisades only has 2 fire stations. There's LAFD Station 69.
Hey, they had to do that on purpose.
They didn't have to say what the name of the fire station was, but somebody decided that should be part of the story.
And what type of firefighter do you think requested transfer to Fire Station 69? Everyone whose behavior is 100% actionable.
There's LAFD Station 69.
Even the way he said it. 69.
I wonder if he winked at the camera when he said it. What about Fire Station 420? Where do they weigh in?
There's
If we were lucky enough to have 420 fire stations, I'd tell you.
There's LAFD Station 69. The average response time for a structure fire from this station is 5 minutes, 7 seconds. For EMS calls, it's even longer at 7 minutes and 35 seconds. And again, the national standard to aim for is just 4 minutes.
Well, have you tried getting through that area? The traffic is awful.
And just think about it. That's when they actually receive the call. That's when Rez answers the phone and you start calling in the emergency to the dispatcher. But before that, you got to find a landline or find a cell phone, call 911, ring, 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 press 1 for English. You're already 2 minutes into it right there.
There's also Station 23, and response times from here average even longer. More than 8
Michael
minutes
Jordan doesn't
for both
respond fast?
More than 8 minutes for both structure fires and EMS calls.
Is that acceptable?
In our view, no. That 4-minute time frame is the difference between life and death, so it's not acceptable.
Battalion Chief Eric Roberts is an LAF.
Not that Eric Roberts.
Different one.
Battalion Chief Eric Roberts is in LAFD's planning department.
As far as I know, I don't think he quit acting to join the fire department.
You never know. Sometimes people, they want a second act.
He says response times are rising because the department is understaffed and under-resourced. In 1960, LAFD had 112 fire stations. Today, it has 106, despite a surge in population.
Okay, what do you think the population of the city of Los Angeles was in 1960?
Okay, we're at what, 3 million now?
We're about 4 million
4
now.
million, okay. In 1960, we had to be under a million.
In 1960, it was 2.5 million.
Oh.
So it's gone up by about 40%.
And we have fewer fire stations.
Yes. And we have built in more wildfire-prone areas since 1960.
And a surge in calls to 911.
And in 1960, there weren't homeless people lighting meth fires all the time.
Now, think about this for a second. In 1960, everyone, and I mean everyone, including pregnant women, smoked cigarettes. And we had fewer fires back then than we have now.
And everyone was a lot calmer.
Yeah, no kidding.
It is also true to say that our staffing levels are
Maybe that's the problem. Maybe we're up to something here, Randy. Maybe all of those pregnant women who were smoking produced the people who are now in elected office that are responsible for taking care of us.
Thanks, nicotine.
It is also true to say that our staffing levels are nearly identical, certainly to the 90s.
So Chief Roberts, with help from an analysis from the International Association of Firefighters, is recommending the city add 62 more fire stations. And that would include placing some of those stations in West LA to help bring down those response times at stations 23 and 69.
We're back to that, are we?
He has to. He has to. There's no real reason to put the number of the fire station in this story, except for one of the numbers in the fire station makes people giggle.
Each star on this map represents one of those proposed fire stations, but this will all likely cost billions of dollars.
The threats we face from...
Hey, it's Tracy Park.
Our girl.
The threats we face from wildfires get worse every year.
Just 21 days before parts of the Palisades burned, Councilmember Tracy Park, who represents the Palisades, voiced her support for a bond measure to get LAFD those extra stations.
If we don't make these investments, what happened in the Pacific Palisades remains a real threat to every community in Los Angeles.
And some might say we don't have the money for this. But if you look at the budget for the city of Los Angeles, just for, I don't know, Karen Bass's Inside Safe program that's been an abject failure, we have the money.
We have the money. We just choose to give it to the crooked homeless organizations that are essentially laundering money.
And all the other non-essential departments that are not the basic services of government.
No. You look at this and you say, okay, look at the fire risk that the city faces. Look at the damage that this fire did to homeowners, to wildlife, to public infrastructure, you name it. And we have the opportunity to spend money on more fire stations and more firefighters. But no, we don't have any money for that. We're broke. We need to turn it all over to Katie Hill so she's got more Dom for the rotisserie.
Park has co-sponsored a measure that, if approved by the full council, would ask LA voters next year to approve a yet-to-be-determined bond amount to fund a larger LAFD.
And while that can be great, what we have seen in times past when we vote on bonds like this is then they have money for that, and they take the money they were going to spend on the fire department and put it to their other pet projects.
None of which work.
The firefighters union promises it would be money well spent.
Is it going to take that bond to lower these response times?
Yes. We need additional fire stations, additional resources.
As for Ken, he still loves the beauty of the Palisades, despite the giant burn scar. He says the fire danger is now so great and the level of city services so low, his HOA may take action.
I think we'll buy some equipment and we'll look into how to staff it.
Okay, so the HOA in this fancy Palisades neighborhood is going to have their own firefighter force.
Well, just think about it. We've essentially already done that with other essential services. The school district is unusable, so you have to send your kid to private schools, or you have to lie about your residence to get them in a good district. If you live in an HOA, your HOA keeps up the streets and keeps up the sidewalks and keeps up the parks or whatever infrastructure you have in your community. So they take care of all of that. We can't use the libraries anymore because the libraries have been taken over by the homeless so they can look at porn on the computers. So we just buy used books on Amazon if that's what you're looking for. A lot of services that people used to use that were taken care of by the government through our tax dollars are now just out of reach. They're just unusable, and we just find alternatives. Well, at a certain point, that becomes the case with police and fire, too, because many of these HOAs have private security firms that patrol the streets and prevent people who don't live there from getting in, and they have cameras all over the place. And they essentially have their own police department. People are opting out.
Now, those HOA police departments, are they able to enforce like penal codes and laws, or are they just driving around to see whose rose bushes got too tall?
Well, they definitely do that. I can speak from experience on that one. But they also, many of these HOAs, do you know they have speed cameras in these HOA communities? So if you order DoorDash, and the guy bringing you your dinner that night goes over the posted speed limit, they will send you a fine as the homeowner.
It's called DoorDash.
No kidding.
Is it almost your own HOA fire department?
I think we'll go there.
Now, as for that bond proposal, Mayor Karen Bass's office told us the mayor supports the idea. The co-sponsor with Tracy Park is Councilmember Monica Rodriguez. Now, we did reach out to all 13 other council members. 5 of the 8 who did respond to us.
Who's going to say I don't want to support fire?
Well, right now, no one. But if it weren't in the wake of these fires, many of them would probably be opposed to it because they would want the money to go somewhere else, to social programs.
5 of the 8 who did respond to us explicitly told us they would back a bond measure, so there does seem to be some momentum behind this, David and Ellen.
But even if that bond measure passes, you're talking potentially years before we get that funding. Is there anything in place to get them the help they need right now?
No.
No, nothing works fast in this state. Nothing.
Right. So before January 7th, Chief Kristen Crowley did draft a new proposed budget. That budget is 7% larger than the current budget. That alone would add about 400 more firefighters and civilian staff. The department says that alone would help lower those response times.
That's good news.
Yeah, the details you presented were shocking. 1960.
Wow. Isn't that?
And the details of the fire station numbers. That was real interesting, too.
Well, I'm sure for a certain portion of the audience that made the story.
Now, typically, when a department proposes their budget, they don't get what they're asking for. Because there's so much scrutiny on Karen Bass right now, I got to imagine they've got to approve whatever the fire department asks for, or there's going to be hell to pay.
Yes, but again, go back to the previous cycle, the previous budget year, when it wasn't in the wake of all of these fires. They chose to cut the budget of the fire department and then lie about it.
Karen?
It's not a namsy-pamsy thing.
If you'd like to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And Randy, if you want to go back and listen to yesterday's show and find out what you missed out on, that's easy to do.
All you got to do is go to KABC.com, click on podcasts, go to the Apple Podcast app, iHeart, Spotify, search for The John Phillips Show, hit subscribe. You can download all the episodes. You could do a Google on the YouTube or get that handy-dandy KABC app. Search KABC AM in the Apple App Store or the Android Store. It's the easiest way to listen live to this radio station and download all the podcasts. You can listen to yesterday's 12 o'clock hour and find out why Barbara Lee will be worse than Cheng Tao.
Quite frankly.
In the meantime, what do you say we make a couple of listeners very happy?
Well, let's do that one right now. 790 KABC welcomes David Foster and Chris Body at the Greek Theater July 19th. Tickets are on sale Friday at Ticketmaster.com. But right now, caller number 9 at 1-888-795-222 gets a pair of tickets to the show. Tickets furnished by Live Nation. Good luck dialing.
Let's go to Pete in Riverside. Pete, hello.
Hey, guys. I've been holding my fire for a while and waiting to call. Let me go through this really fast. You know, that's my old stomping grounds. I almost want to friggin' break into tears. I used to run down the Palisades, down Sunset Boulevard. I was raised in Santa Monica, and, you know, when you were depressed, when you were down, when you were feeling good, whatever, that was the go-to place. You go to the beach, whatever. You run up to Will Rogers State Park, which they have burnt up. Used to take my mother there. Now listen to me. You had a caller call either yesterday or the day before, blaming, or saying he must have had friends in the city or county, whatever, politics. But he's sitting there telling you, 100 miles an hour winds, 100 miles an hour. What is anybody going to do against that? Okay, Larry Elder has a show. I know I'm not supposed to, mention other, but he's a friend of your show. So he has three firemen. Either I think they're in fairly high places. He wouldn't be asking for their advice, and at least one of them said if the resources had been pre-placed like normal, it would have been 20% of the damage. 100 miles an hour winds were gusts. That was not going all the time. So I heard, when the fire hydrants supposedly, they went there and there was no water in them, I'm hearing people, firemen on the radio say, hey, it took us too long to go get water tankers. Those water tankers should have been pre-placed very close to Pacific Palisades. Within 5 minutes of going, go and get it and bring it to the spot. Okay? And if you need more water tankers, then you go to the Inland Empire, wherever they're not having a fire, and you borrow more. But you pre-place them. Now let's talk about the roof. The roof supposedly, I've done a lot of construction in my life. The roof was supposedly torn. Okay, are we using the water to drink or just put out a fire? We're using it to put out a fire. Who cares if it's got dirt in it or if it's got bird poop in it, whatever. You put some sort of a temporary fix on it. Now, could you guys, as your show, could you invite, 3 guys to call that might know about, how much money it would have cost and the amount of time to fix that roof? You know what I'm saying? Even if it was not a perfect job, but it wouldn't have taken 11 months. I would love to hear somebody say, oh, yeah, here's what it would have taken.
Now, wait a minute. The
Here's
11 months.
I'm telling you,
the
we
11
need
months,
in all government.
sir, the 11 months was just accepting bids. I don't believe they ever started construction on that.
They did not. It was insanity. Here's what we need in government. You need, just like if I go and I get hired somewhere and I look good on paper, I could have lied about all my references, which probably 80% of people do. I never did it myself, but I never thought of it. But you can look good on paperwork, but you may be a piece of POS, right?
A piece of a piece?
Job done. A POS. Anyways, how about performance reviews? Can we do that? Could we at least evolve into that? Like, hey, you're not getting the job done. We gave you the job. You have a performance review, and you failed it.
Well, the fish rots from the head. Look at the mayor. The mayor was told that we would have extreme winds, that there would be extreme fire risk. And instead of sticking around and saying, okay, let's make sure that we have plenty of water in our fire zones. Let's make sure that the staffing in our fire department is where it needs to be. Let's make sure we talk to other fire departments in other parts of the state so we have access to their resources. Instead of sticking around and being the coach, being the quarterback, being whatever it is you want to call her, instead of doing that, she was at a cocktail party on a different continent. And when people in the fire department and people in the Department of Water and Power and people in other city agencies see the mayor of the city treating an extreme situation like it's not that big of a deal, they act that way too. And then you end up with an entire city that is caught flat-footed by something that could have been not entirely preventable, but it could have been handled a little bit better, let's say, than how it was handled. Because when you're an absentee landlord, you miss a lot of things. And she was gone. Well, I was looking at my phone the entire plane ride home. Okay, well, what does that mean?
She wasn't there.
This, to me, is a public health emergency.
If you'd like to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And Randy, you're monitoring the mailbag.
Andy writes in at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com and says, Johnny, Randy, we grew up in the 60s, and when we were playing ball on our block, firefighters regularly inspected hydrants. I've lived in Porter Ranch for 20 years, have yet to witness one inspection. What do we see is dozens of firemen at Ralph's, Cava, you name it, for hours per day. They need to get back to cleaning storm drains and brush clearance. Wait, is it their job to clean the storm drains?
I don't know about that, but point taken. Let's go to Philip in San Dimas. Philip, hello.
Hey, how you doing?
Good.
This is Phil. I just want to make a comment. Everything that's going on in California, especially in Los Angeles, is not certainly to blame as the voters, right? We voted to this incompetent politicians running our cities. Now, this has been happening for the past 20 years. I'm born and raised in Los Angeles, and thank goodness I left that daggone place. And if you drive around in the L.A. area, you really think you're driving around a third world country. So now, with that said, this is what you're getting. So embrace the suck, accept your voter. Consequences can be outcome in your political figure. So now we have incompetent liberal leadership throughout all the state, all across in California. So embrace the suck. California is a dirt hole, third world country. That's what I got to say.
Dadgummit.
Thank you for the call, Sarah. Well, he actually makes a very interesting point, which is if you don't like the world around you, which many of us don't, we don't like the condition of our streets, we don't like the condition of our schools, we don't like the condition of our infrastructure. What a lot of people ended up doing was leaving the state. We know about the people going to Texas or going to Arizona or Nevada. But even within the state of California, there's been a population shift where people leave the city of Los Angeles, for example, and they go to Burbank, or they go to Calabasas, or they go to Orange County, or they go to the Inland Empire. Because that way, in many cases, you can't do anything about the state government, I guess, because that still is abysmal. But you can live with Los Angeles weather if you live in Claremont or you live in San Dimas without Los Angeles city government. And that is kind of the life hack that a lot of people have used. You particularly see it in eastern LA County. You go to places like Whittier and those communities. I mentioned Claremont, San Dimas, Glendora. You talk to people who moved there recently, many of them are from the city of LA, where they just got tired of nothing working. So they figured, all right, I'll take the next best thing. It might be farther from the airport. It might be farther from Staples Center, or whatever they're calling it now. It might be farther from all the concert venues, or it might be farther from my office. But it's worth a little sanity to live in a place where things work the way they're supposed to. Or at least they work more often than they do in the city of Los Angeles. Let's go to Ben in L.A. Ben, hello.
Yeah, I agree with many of your callers. Your show is great, not just because we got you, but we get some pretty smart people out there. And unfortunately, it doesn't seem like many of them are being invited by our government to contribute because the city and the county act like they're completely ignorant and like they don't want to hire experts. If you do the simple math, you ask yourself, we're losing 150, 200 billion, and we lose billions every year. Well, the super scooper is only 300 million. If we got a fleet of super scoopers, chances are our response and our losses would be greatly reduced. In other words, they would pay for themselves. We don't have these kind of discussions. We have unrealistic, rather foolish discussions of leasing foreign super scoopers, and they often take weeks to get here after fire season. We're reacting to things that are really getting worse and worse. And what I find with an unchallenged government, which is what you have when you have a Democratic monopoly, is they don't feel committed or responsible for anything. If you'll notice, and I'm a former Democrat, I'm now an independent, when Democrats talk about disaster, generally after they've happened, they will reluctantly acknowledge that there is a problem, and everyone is pulling their hair out, and you feel like you've got victory just getting them to acknowledge there's a problem. And then they keep repeating this over and over ad nauseum without any suggestion for solutions. Well, we've had devastating fires in Brazil and Australia. They've greatly improved everything from mitigation to building, and they should. And fires in one part of the world can affect every other place on Earth. That smoke doesn't stop at international boundaries.
Here's what's funny, though. You listen to the criticisms of what came from the city of Los Angeles in terms of fighting this fire. I'm sure there are many arguments for and against what you're suggesting with the aircraft that could be used to help fight the fire. But the criticism I'm hearing is even more basic than that. Why weren't the fire hydrants working? Why was the reservoir empty and the DWP didn't tell the fire department? Why was the fire department's budget cut? Why was the mayor in Africa? It's the fundamentals. It's the basic things. Throw the ball, catch the ball, hit the ball that they fell on their face on. And until they can get those things right, do you trust these people to deal with aircraft and dumping water and chemicals on fires to the degree that you just suggested? They have to get the basics right before they can move on to all the other stuff. All right, we've got 2 more hours coming up on the John Phillips Show. The Fix California Hour is next. Don't you go anywhere. This is Talk Radio 790 KABC.